The night Daniel Reed met her, his taxi almost became her coffin. A second later, and she would have been gone forever. But what truly changed his life was not the accident that almost happened on that rainy New York street. It was the voice she used when she said only 5 words. "Please, don't take me home." And in that moment, Daniel, who had heard thousands of broken stories from strangers, realized this was not just another passenger. This was the beginning of something he could never escape. Daniel Reed was 32 years old, a taxi driver in New York City. To most people, he was just another yellow cab driver stuck in traffic, waiting for fares, surviving on tips. But Daniel was different. His taxi was not just a car. It was a confessional. People didn't just sit in his cab. They broke down inside it. A businessman once cried about losing his company. A woman once whispered about her cheating husband. A teenage boy once admitted he didn't want to live anymore. And Daniel listened to all of them. Not because he had answers, but because he knew what silence felt like when no one listens. But Daniel had one rule. I never ask questions. I only listen. Because he believed something strange. If people were allowed to speak without interruption, they eventually healed themselves. But Daniel was wrong about one thing. Some pain does not heal by talking. Some pain finds you back. It was a cold, heavy rain in Manhattan. The streets were glowing with reflections of neon lights. Daniel was about to end his shift. He was tired, emotionally drained. He had just dropped off a man who cried for 20 minutes about his divorce. Daniel sighed and whispered to himself, "Just one more ride, then home." And that's when it happened. A woman appeared on the sidewalk. She was standing still in the rain, soaked, not moving, not even trying to stop a taxi. Just standing like she had forgotten where she was. Daniel slowed down instinctively. Something about her made him uneasy. And then, a car came speeding around the corner. It lost control on the wet road. It was heading straight toward her. Daniel didn't think. He just reacted. He slammed his taxi into the lane. Honk. Screech. His taxi blocked the other car just inches before impact. The other vehicle swerved and crashed into a barrier instead. The sound echoed through the street. People shouted. Rain poured harder. And, in the middle of it all, Daniel turned his head toward her. She was still standing there, shaking, alive, but completely frozen. That was the moment their eyes met. And Daniel felt something he could not explain. Like his life had just changed direction. Daniel rolled down his window. "Are you okay?" he shouted through the rain. She didn't answer at first. She just stared at him like she had seen something impossible. Then slowly, she walked toward the taxi. Each step was unsteady. Like she was walking toward a decision she had already made before arriving here. She opened the back door and sat inside without saying a word. Daniel looked at her through the rear mirror. Her face was pale. Wet hair stuck to her cheeks. Her hands were shaking. He asked again softly, "Where do you want to go?" Silence. For almost 10 seconds. Then she spoke. And her voice broke him more than the accident almost did. "Anywhere, just not home." Daniel paused. Most passengers say home when they're tired. But she said the opposite. That was not escape. That was running away from something dangerous. He nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "I'll drive." And he did not ask anything else. But something inside him told him. This ride would not end like the others. The taxi moved through the rainy streets. Minutes passed. Then 10. Then 20. Still no address. Still no direction. Just silence. Until Daniel finally broke his own rule. Not a question. Just a statement. "You look like you've had a very long day." She laughed. But it wasn't a real laugh. It was broken. Like glass trying to pretend it wasn't shattered. "My whole life is a long day," she said quietly. Daniel didn't respond. He just kept driving. Then she suddenly said, "Do you ever feel like you're invisible?" That question hit him harder than expected. He glanced at her again. "I think everyone feels that sometimes," he said. She shook her head. "No. I mean, truly invisible. Like even when you scream, no one hears you." Silence filled the taxi again. Only rain tapping on the roof. Daniel didn't know what to say, because he knew that feeling too well. After nearly an hour of driving, Daniel pulled over near Brooklyn Bridge. The lights reflected beautifully on the water. Tourists were gone. Only the sound of wind and rain remained. He turned slightly. "We've been driving for a while," he said gently. "You can stay here as long as you want." She looked outside, then whispered, "I used to come here with someone." Daniel didn't ask who, but she continued anyway. "Now I come alone, because I don't know where else to go." A tear rolled down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away like it was something shameful. But Daniel saw it. And for the first time in years, he felt something inside him shift. Not sympathy. Not curiosity. Something deeper. Connection. After a long silence, she finally spoke again. "My name is Emma." Daniel nodded. "Daniel." Another pause. Emma looked at him in the mirror. "You don't talk like other drivers." Daniel smiled slightly. "Maybe I talk less." Emma shook her head. "No. You listen differently." That sentence stayed in the air longer than the silence. Daniel didn't understand why it mattered. But it did. More than it should have. Emma suddenly gripped the seat in front of her. Her breathing became uneven. "I shouldn't have gotten in your taxi," she whispered. Daniel frowned slightly. "Why?" She looked terrified now. Not of him, but of something else. "I think I'm being followed." Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He looked outside. Nothing unusual. But the way she said it, it wasn't imagination. It was fear that had been living too long inside her. Before Daniel could respond, a black car slowly passed them, then stopped a few meters ahead. Emma froze completely. "That's him," she whispered. And in that moment, Daniel realized this ride was no longer about a passenger. It was about survival. Daniel stared at the black car ahead. The rain got heavier. Emma's hands were shaking violently now. And she whispered the words that changed everything. "If he finds me, I won't survive tonight." Daniel looked at her, then at the car, and made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He put his taxi in drive, and said quietly, "Then you're not getting out of this alone." The black car stayed still in the rain. Its headlights cut through the darkness like two cold eyes watching them. Inside the taxi, Emma looked like she had stopped breathing. Daniel could hear the rain, the engine, his own heartbeat. But Emma's silence frightened him the most. Because this was not ordinary fear. This was the fear of someone who had already suffered too much. Daniel tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "Who is he?" he asked quietly. Emma swallowed hard. "You need to drive." Daniel looked at her in the mirror. "Emma, please," she whispered sharply. "Before he sees me." That was enough. Daniel pressed the accelerator. The taxi moved forward quickly, splashing through rainwater as it turned onto another street. In the rearview mirror, the black car remained still for 2 seconds. Then its headlights turned, and it began following them. Emma looked back and immediately panicked. "He's following us." Daniel stayed calm on the outside, but inside, tension spread through his chest. "How long has this been happening?" Emma hugged herself tightly. "For months." "Why didn't you go to the police?" She laughed bitterly. "Because people like him know how to look innocent." Daniel drove faster through the wet streets. Traffic lights reflected red and yellow across the windshield. The black car stayed behind them. Not too close. Not too far. Like it enjoyed the chase. Daniel finally asked, "Who is he to you?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. "My ex-boyfriend." Daniel expected many answers. But not that one. "He wasn't always like this," she whispered. "At least, I thought he wasn't." "What's his name?" "Ryan." The way she said his name sounded painful. Like every letter carried a memory she wished she could erase. Daniel turned onto a quieter road. Emma stared out the window while speaking softly. "When I met Ryan, everyone loved him." She smiled sadly. He knew exactly what to say. Exactly how to make people feel special. Daniel remained silent. He bought flowers. Remembered birthdays. Opened doors. Made me feel safe. Her voice cracked. "But some people don't become monsters overnight." Daniel looked at her through the mirror. They become monsters slowly. Emma nodded. The first time he shouted at me, he apologized for hours. The rain became heavier outside. The first time he grabbed my arm too hard, he cried afterward. Daniel felt anger slowly rising inside him. And then one day, Emma whispered, I realized I was afraid of the person who said he loved me. The taxi became silent again. But Daniel's chest felt heavy now, because he had driven many heartbroken people before. But Emma was different. She wasn't just heartbroken. She was hunted. The black car was still behind them. Daniel took 3 fast turns. Still there. Emma noticed his jaw tighten. You've dealt with bad people before, haven't you? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Then he finally spoke. My father was one. Emma looked up. He drank every night, Daniel said quietly. And every night my mother pretended she was okay. His eyes stayed fixed on the road. When I was 13, I learned something. What? People can smile in public and suffer in private. Emma stared at him silently. Daniel rarely spoke about his past. Almost never. But something about Emma made honesty easier. Maybe because broken people recognize each other faster than healthy people do. An hour later, Daniel stopped outside a small roadside motel in Queens. The sign flickered weakly in the rain. Emma looked confused. What are we doing here? You need somewhere safe tonight. Emma immediately shook her head. No, I can't involve you. You already did. She looked down guiltily. Daniel sighed softly. Emma, listen to me carefully. She looked up. You're scared. You haven't slept properly in days. And someone is following you. He paused. You don't need to fight everything alone tonight. Emma's eyes filled again. Not because of fear this time. Because nobody had said those words to her in a very long time. Inside the motel room, the lighting was dim but warm. Emma sat on the edge of the bed quietly while Daniel handed her coffee. As she reached for it, her sleeve moved slightly. And Daniel saw it. A bruise. Dark purple. Near her wrist. His stomach tightened instantly. Emma quickly pulled her sleeve down. But it was too late. Daniel's voice became colder. He did that. Emma looked away. It's not recent. That's not what I asked. Silence. Then slowly. She nodded. Daniel turned away for a second. Because anger was spreading through him faster than he expected. Not normal anger. The dangerous kind. The kind that comes from seeing someone hurt after pretending to be strong for too long. Emma whispered softly. You don't need to look at me like that. Daniel frowned. Like what? Like I'm damaged. His expression softened immediately. You're not damaged. Emma looked unconvinced. You survived something painful, he continued quietly. That's different. Those words hit Emma harder than she expected. Because Ryan had spent 2 years convincing her she was weak. Too emotional. Too difficult. Too sensitive. But Daniel spoke to her like she was human. And somehow, that hurt even more. It was almost 2 a.m. Rain still hit the window softly. Daniel sat near the small table while Emma rested against the wall. Neither of them wanted to sleep. Finally, Emma asked, Why do you drive a taxi? Daniel smiled faintly. Honestly? She nodded. Because people talk more to strangers than to family. Emma gave a tiny smile. That's true. Daniel leaned back slightly. In taxis, people confess things they've never said out loud. Why? Because they know they'll probably never see the driver again. Emma looked at him carefully. But we'll see each other again. The sentence came out naturally. But the moment she realized what she said, her cheeks turned slightly red. Daniel felt something strange in his chest. Something warm. Something dangerous. Because he had spent years listening to people's love stories, without expecting to become part of one himself. Suddenly, Emma's phone vibrated. Her entire body stiffened instantly. Daniel noticed. Who is it? Emma looked terrified. It's Ryan. The phone kept vibrating. Again. 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 Daniel held out his hand slowly. Give it to me. Emma hesitated. Then handed him the phone. The screen showed 17 missed calls. And one new message appeared. Emma looked like she might faint. Daniel opened it. The message read, You can run from me, Emma. But nobody will ever love you like I do. Daniel's expression darkened immediately. Then another message appeared. I saw the taxi. Emma covered her mouth in horror. Daniel looked toward the motel window. Suddenly, the room no longer felt safe. Then the final message came. And this time, even Daniel felt chills. Tell your driver to check outside. Daniel moved quickly toward the window. Emma stood behind him trembling. Outside, the parking lot was nearly empty. Rain poured under the motel lights. And Daniel's taxi was gone. Emma whispered in panic. Oh my God. Daniel's face hardened. Ryan had not just followed them. He had been watching, waiting, playing with fear. And now Daniel understood something terrifying. This wasn't obsession anymore. This was control. Ryan wanted Emma to believe she could never escape him. But Daniel also realized something else. Ryan had made a mistake. Because now, this was personal. Emma suddenly broke down crying. I'm sorry, she whispered repeatedly. I'm so sorry. Daniel turned toward her immediately. This isn't your fault. Yes, it is, she cried. Everyone who gets close to me gets dragged into this. Daniel walked closer carefully. Emma's breathing became shaky again. You should leave before things get worse, she whispered. Daniel stared at her for a long moment. Then quietly said, No. Emma looked shocked. No, I'm not leaving you alone. Why? She asked emotionally. You barely know me. Daniel looked directly into her eyes. And for the first time in years, he answered with complete honesty. Because the moment you got into my taxi. He paused softly. I knew you mattered. Emma froze. The world outside disappeared for a second. Rain. Fear. Ryan. Everything faded. Because nobody had looked at her with sincerity in a very long time. And deep inside her broken heart, something fragile began breathing again. Hope. Then suddenly, knock, knock, knock. Both of them froze. The knock came again. Slow, calm, almost polite. Emma's face lost all color. Daniel moved silently toward the door. Another knock. Then a man's voice from outside. Soft, controlled, terrifying. Emma. I know you're in there. Emma grabbed Daniel's arm in fear. Tears streamed down her face. And the voice outside spoke again. You shouldn't trust strangers. Daniel's jaw tightened. Because now he understood the truth. Ryan wasn't just dangerous. He was the kind of man who enjoyed making people afraid. And standing outside that motel room was the man who might destroy both their lives. Emma held Daniel's arm tightly as the knocking continued. Daniel looked around the motel room quickly. One door. One window. No easy escape. Then Ryan's voice came one final time from outside the room. Open the door now, or I'll make this much worse. Daniel slowly clenched his fists. Because for the first time in years, the quiet taxi driver who only listened to broken hearts was ready to fight for one. The knocking continued. Slow, heavy, patient. Like the man outside already believed he owned the ending of the story. Inside the motel room, Emma could barely breathe. Her fingers clutched Daniel's arm so tightly that her hands trembled. Daniel stayed still, thinking, listening. Another knock echoed through the room. Then Ryan's calm voice came again. Emma, don't make me angry. Emma whispered shakily. That means he's already angry. Daniel looked at her carefully. There was real terror in her eyes. Not fear of being hurt. Fear of what Ryan became when he lost control. Daniel lowered his voice. Is there another exit? Emma quickly shook her head. No. The room suddenly felt smaller. The rain outside hit harder against the windows. Daniel's mind raced. Then, Ryan laughed softly from outside the door. You know what happens when you ignore me. Emma's face turned pale instantly. Daniel noticed. And in that moment, he realized something horrifying. Ryan didn't just threaten her. He trained her to fear him. Daniel stepped toward the door quietly. Emma grabbed his wrist. Don't, she whispered desperately. But Daniel looked calm now. Too calm. The kind of calm people get when they stop being afraid. He gently moved her behind him, then unlocked the door. The moment the door opened, Ryan stood there smiling. And somehow, that smile was more frightening than shouting. Ryan looked clean and confident. Dark coat, perfect hair, relaxed posture. The type of man people trusted immediately. But Daniel noticed something important. Ryan's eyes. Cold. Empty. Like kindness was something he performed, not felt. Ryan glanced at Emma behind Daniel. "There you are," he said softly. Emma looked away instantly. Ryan smiled wider. Then his eyes moved toward Daniel. "And you must be the taxi driver." Daniel didn't respond. Ryan extended his hand casually. "Ryan Carter." Daniel ignored the hand. Ryan slowly lowered it, still smiling, but his eyes darkened slightly. Ryan leaned lightly against the doorway. "Emma gets emotional sometimes," he said calmly. "She tends to overreact." Daniel's jaw tightened immediately, because he had heard that sentence before. Abusive people always used similar words. Crazy, sensitive, emotional, overreacting. Small words used to destroy someone slowly. Emma whispered weakly. "Please stop." Ryan ignored her. "She had a difficult childhood," he continued. "Sometimes she creates problems in her head." Daniel finally spoke. "She's scared of you." Ryan chuckled softly. "No, she's confused." Then Ryan looked directly at Emma. "Tell him." Emma froze. Ryan's voice became gentler, manipulative. "Tell him I love you." Daniel watched Emma carefully, and what he saw made his stomach turn. She looked trapped, like years of fear were choking her voice. Finally she whispered, "You need to leave, Ryan." For the first time, Ryan's smile disappeared. Only for 1 second. But Daniel saw it, and that second revealed the real man underneath. Dangerous, controlling, unstable. Ryan took 1 step forward. Daniel immediately blocked him. The air between them became tense. Ryan's voice dropped lower now. "You really want to get involved in this?" Daniel answered without hesitation. "Yes." Ryan laughed quietly. "You don't even know her." Daniel looked him directly in the eyes. "I know enough." Ryan stared at him silently for several seconds, then smiled again. But this time the smile looked cruel. "You think you're saving her?" His eyes shifted toward Emma. "She always runs away eventually." Emma's breathing became uneven again. Ryan continued softly. "And every time she comes back." Daniel noticed tears forming in Emma's eyes. Not because she believed Ryan, but because part of her feared he might be right. That's what emotional abuse does. It makes people doubt their own freedom. Ryan suddenly looked around the motel room with disgust. "All this drama," he muttered. "Over a small argument." Daniel snapped. "A bruise is not a small argument." The room became silent. Ryan's eyes slowly returned to Daniel. "Dangerous now." "Careful," he said quietly. Daniel stepped closer. "No, you be careful." For the first time, Ryan stopped pretending. His face hardened completely, and Emma immediately began shaking harder. Because she knew that face. That was the real Ryan. The one nobody else ever saw. Ryan suddenly grabbed Daniel's shirt aggressively. "You have no idea who you're talking to." But Daniel didn't move. Didn't flinch. Years of hearing pain from strangers had taught him something important. The loudest people are often the weakest. Daniel slowly removed Ryan's hand from his shirt, then said something that hit Ryan harder than a punch. "If she's so desperate to escape you, maybe you were never love in the first place." Ryan's eyes filled with rage instantly. And then, he punched Daniel. Emma screamed. Daniel stumbled backward into the table. Ryan attacked again immediately. Years of bottled anger exploded from him now. Because men like Ryan hated one thing most: losing control. Daniel blocked the second punch and shoved Ryan backward. The motel lamp crashed to the floor. Rain thundered outside. Emma cried desperately. "Stop." But neither man listened. Ryan charged again violently. Daniel hit him hard this time. Ryan fell against the wall. For a second, silence filled the room. Then Ryan laughed. Actually laughed. Blood touched the corner of his mouth. "You think she'll love you now?" he whispered. Daniel breathed heavily. "This isn't about me." Ryan looked toward Emma again, and his voice suddenly became softer, almost emotional. "You belong with me," Emma finally shouted. "No." The room froze. Even Ryan looked shocked. Because maybe that was the first time she had ever said it so loudly, so clearly, so fearlessly. Emma stepped forward, tears running down her face. "I was never yours." Ryan stared at her silently, and something terrifying changed in his eyes. The calm disappeared completely. Now there was only obsession. Emma's voice shook. "You want to know why I stayed so long?" She looked at Daniel briefly, then back at Ryan. "Because he made me believe nobody else would ever love me." Ryan's expression hardened. Emma cried openly now. "He controlled my clothes, my friends, my phone, my entire life." Daniel felt rage burning inside him. But Emma continued. "And every time he hurt me, he apologized afterward." Ryan suddenly shouted. "Because I cared about you." "No," Emma screamed back. "Because you wanted to own me." Silence exploded through the room. Ryan looked stunned. Like hearing the truth out loud physically hurt him. Emma wiped her tears, then said the sentence that truly ended everything. "Love should not make someone afraid to breathe." Ryan stared at her, and Daniel realized something important. This wasn't just Emma escaping Ryan anymore. This was Emma finally choosing herself. Suddenly Ryan reached inside his jacket. Daniel's eyes widened instantly. "A gun." Emma gasped in horror. Ryan held it shakily. "Not calm anymore. Not charming. Just broken and dangerous." "If I can't have you," he whispered emotionally, "then nobody will." Daniel slowly stepped in front of Emma. Ryan pointed the gun directly at him. Emma cried. "Ryan, please." Rain hammered against the windows violently now. Ryan's hand trembled. "You ruined everything," he shouted at Daniel. Daniel's heart pounded hard. But strangely, he wasn't thinking about himself. He was thinking about Emma surviving this night. That was all that mattered. Ryan's finger tightened slightly on the trigger, and Daniel prepared himself for the worst. Then suddenly, police sirens echoed outside. Ryan froze. Emma looked shocked. Daniel frowned in confusion. Then Emma whispered, "I called them earlier." Daniel looked at her. Her hands were shaking, but there was determination in her eyes now. Ryan panicked immediately. "You called the police?" Blue and red lights flashed through the motel window. Ryan backed away toward the door desperately. His entire confident mask collapsed instantly. And, for the first time, he looked exactly what he truly was. Not powerful. Not untouchable. Just a frightened coward losing control. Police officers stormed toward the room. Ryan tried to run. But seconds later, he was tackled to the ground outside the motel. Emma collapsed emotionally onto the bed. And Daniel finally exhaled. Because it was over. Finally over. The rain stopped before sunrise. The world outside looked washed clean. Emma sat quietly beside Daniel outside the motel. Both exhausted. Neither speaking for a while. Then Emma whispered softly, "You stayed." Daniel looked at her. "Of course." She smiled weakly. "No one ever stays." That sentence broke something inside him, because he realized how abandoned she must have felt for years. Daniel looked at the sunrise ahead. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "people leave because they're afraid." Emma looked at him. "And you?" Daniel smiled faintly. "I think I got tired of being afraid a long time ago." Emma laughed softly through tears. And for the first time since entering his taxi, her smile looked real. Weeks passed. Ryan was arrested. Emma slowly began rebuilding her life. It wasn't easy. Healing never is. Some nights she still woke up afraid. Some days she doubted herself again. But Daniel stayed beside her. Not trying to fix her. Not trying to save her. Just loving her patiently. And somehow, that healed her more than grand promises ever could. Daniel also changed. For years, he listened to broken hearts from a distance, never allowing himself to feel too much. But Emma taught him something important. You cannot spend your whole life helping others heal while ignoring your own loneliness. One evening, months later, Emma sat beside him inside the taxi. The city lights reflected across the windshield. Daniel smiled slightly. "You know," he said, "you were the strangest passenger I ever picked up." Emma laughed. "And you were the only driver who never tried to impress me." Daniel looked at her warmly. "I was too busy worrying about keeping you alive." Emma smiled softly. Then her expression became emotional. "You did more than that." Daniel looked at her quietly. Emma took his hand gently. "You helped me remember who I was." And in that moment, Daniel realized something beautiful. The taxi driver who spent years listening to broken hearts had finally found someone willing to hold his own. A year later, Daniel still drove his taxi through New York City. People still entered with broken stories. People still cried in the back seat sometimes. But now, whenever Daniel finished his shift, someone waited for him. Emma. And every night before sleeping, Daniel silently thanked the rainy night that almost took her away from him forever. Because sometimes, the people who enter our lives unexpectedly become the reason we finally heal. And sometimes the person who saves you is also the person you save right back. If this story touched your heart, then remember this. Real love does not control you. Real love does not frighten you. Real love makes you feel safe enough to be yourself. And if you enjoyed this emotional story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable love stories filled with emotion, mystery, heartbreak, and beautiful endings.